Hi, everybody. Thank you for staying. And for those of you who will be watching later, I know that a lot of people are out today because of flu and other things that are going through our community right now. So thank you for being here, those of you who are able. We started this search and call process a little over 2 years ago, which is kind of wild. And I think that people on search and call definitely feel it. But we did want to go ahead and kind of give you an overview and update. Some of you are new to the church since we started, so some of this is going to be new to you, and kind of want to explain that a little bit, and for others, some of it will be a little bit of review. But some of the members of Search and Call are here today as well. So Joel and I are co-chairs of the Search and Call Committee. And then we have Rich and Tracy and Peter and Kathy, who's not here today, and Sandy as well, and Carla. Okay, so if you're, and Lisa.
Terry, can you go to the next slide if you don't mind? There we go. All the names are there at the top.
So all of these people who are on the committee were either nominated by somebody else or self-nominated at an annual meeting and voted on by the congregation. And one of the first things that we did as a committee was we had a Monday, Thursday dinner in which we allowed for some in-person conversation about some of the things that we thought were important about our church. And we, in addition to that, we started by looking at what we needed for the profile and creating a all-church survey. We also got input from Cabinet about some other things that would help Cabinet do their business as well, and we kind of molded those together. And we took some time to analyze that. We had another meeting to tell everybody kind of the highlights of the results of that survey. And then starting in 2024, we took all of that information and we started to create our profile, which is a 50-page document that took a lot of hours and input from the congregation, but also from our committee to draft and put together. And then finally, in August of last year, we were able to publish that profile.
All right, if we go to the next slide, I'm going to walk you kind of through what the process is if you're not familiar with the end-to-end process for selecting a candidate. So we get profiles from our conference office. That's the South Central Conference down in Houston. And so they send us profiles. We get those profiles and we do an initial review of all of what I say profiles. It's basically the candidate puts their own, it's like a resume on steroids. It's their whole faith journey, it's references, it's background checks. It's a lot of information that helps us get to know them a little bit better. So when we first get that profile in, we ask them for online sermons. This is a nice benefit now in our state of age with having online sermons available. If anybody ever did a search in the past, they were cassette tapes or CDs that got mailed in to search committees. So it's nice to be able to go in and see a plethora of sermons. So we do a social media check on that particular candidate. So we're looking at Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. Yes, we've had lots of candidates with TikToks. What else are we looking at? If they have a website, if they have a YouTube channel, and we're kind of looking for what their presence online looks like and if there's any red flags for any of their content that they're posting. We will watch a selection of their sermons, some of those which they provide, some of which we can find online. And then we have a particular set of categories that we're assessing them on. One is preaching, theology, leadership, pastoral care, justice outreach, their written communication, and then any red flags that we saw in their social media or in their profiles. And then after that takes about a month to do all of that. We then decide if we want to move into the next phase, which is do we want to interview them? And so we contact them to do multiple virtual interviews with us. We'll go through here in a minute kind of how many we've done of the candidates we've received. If we like them through the virtual, and they're interviewing us too during those times as well. But if we mutually agree to move forward after the virtual interview, then we have an in-person weekend with them, and that is just with the search committee. And so that usually, in previous, like in past generations, that would always entail what's called a neutral pulpit. Well, they would go to a different church locally, and we would go hear them preach. But that's usually because we haven't had it, search committees haven't had an opportunity to hear them preach a lot. In this day and age, we can see hundreds of their sermons sometimes. And so it's kind of, it's not always a definite that we do a neutral pulpit depending on, the availability of local churches and that type of thing. But that weekend will be more interviews with them, a little bit more formal. We'll have meals with them. We'll get to know them. If they have a spouse or a partner, they will bring them as well, typically, and we'll have time with them as well. They'll get to tour the grounds, ask us a ton of questions, and so that's what that whole weekend entails. After that, if we want to move forward, usually it is we want to call them as the pastor. And so that we would then get them in touch with the trustees to start negotiating terms of call. Usually our terms of call are set. Basically, that's just a fancy word for how much are we going to pay them, how much vacation time, those type of stipends that are built into their contract. But most everything that we have is pretty much set. There are a little bit of areas for negotiating, but they'll start negotiating at that point with our trustees. And then we will set what's called a candidate weekend, where they come to spend time with us, and it's that weekend that we are going to try to extend a call to them. So what that weekend looks like is on a Friday evening, they would meet with the leadership of the church, the cabinet. On Saturday, we would have a meet and greet with the entire church, have a Q&A, open questions. If you remember when we did this with Leanne, there was a whole afternoon where people were able to just pepper her with questions. But that's a time for you all to in an informal setting, meet the candidate. And then on Sunday morning, they would preach. And then after they preach, we would take a congregational vote. The hope would be that that vote would be close to 100% unanimous. I'll tell you that candidates have usually set what their percentage is that they're going to accept before they will accept that call. And it's usually pretty high, like 90%. And so if they get that percentage that we're looking for, also the cabinet, what they're looking for, we will then the cabinet will sit right there, and I believe it's the moderator and the chair of the trustees will sign that contract with them right there. They'll come in, and then we'll celebrate them at the end of that congregational meeting as our new called pastor. After that, they have to give notice to their church, wherever they're at. And that could be anywhere from a month to 2 months. We like not to take it that longer than that. So that process, after we call them, about 2 months after that. So the whole process, beginning to end, just with one candidate going the happy path, is about 6 months. So I just want to kind of set that up. Terry, you can go to the next screen. I'm going to walk you through some of the results, and I know it's a little bit small on the screen, but I'll read you some of these results. But we've been working very closely hand in hand with our new conference minister, Reverend Molly Carlson. So when she came on board, she's our interim conference minister. When she came on board, she immediately got in contact with us, met with Vanessa and I, and committed to helping solicit our profile out there for other candidates that she might know. And that has been fruitful. We've gotten candidates from her word of mouth. And she's also been involved very heavily in one of the particular candidates that I'll speak to a little bit about. We got pretty far into the process with. We have also taken a proactive approach. We've looked at about 50% of the churches across the United States and scoured the yearbook and identified pastors that might be best suited to apply for us, and we've reached out to them proactively. So there was about 2,400 churches that we went through and identified, between 50 and 100 names, including there's a younger pastoral leadership group called Next Generation Leadership Initiative, the NGLI. And that's the UCC basically has young up-and-coming pastors apply for this leadership initiative. So it's by application. And so we also sent that out to all of those NGLI pastors as well. So we didn't want to just sit on our hands and wait for profiles to come in. We wanted to be proactive in that as well. All right, so let's talk how many candidates we've received. We received 19 total profiles. 17 of those have been turned down so far by the committee, and 2 of those have removed themselves just because they were already far along in a different process with a different church. 2 of the 19 are currently in review. One of those 2, we've completed 2 rounds of virtual interviews with them, and we've got an in-person visit scheduled mid-March. So fingers crossed. The mix of candidates that we're receiving, 10 of the 19 were women. 13 of the 19 are LGBTQ. 6 of the 19 are present as Black, but they haven't self-identified, so we've put them in the category of Black, Indigenous, or people of color, BIPOC. To let you know a little bit of the delay in our process, we had one particular candidate that we reached very far into the process, to the point where we thought we were going to be calling them in December. That's how far along we were. And through a lot of last minute discovery of some red flags, we ended up having to meet with their conference minister at their conference, also their committee on the ministry chair, bring in our conference minister, our committee on the ministry chair. I think Vanessa and I were having hourly conversations with Shannon Michael for 3 weeks straight, it felt like. So know that this process is not just the search committee, it's also Shannon Michael standing us up and supporting us through all of that too. But just to let you know, we got really far with a particular candidate, and to the point that they were coming for an in-person weekend, and we thought we were all kind of in love with them. And we ended up having to turn them down because of some of the discoveries that we made. So that was around the December timeframe, and we've kind of jumped back into a lot of the profiles and have this one that we're bringing in for in-person in March. So, all right, I'll turn it back to you.
If you'll go to the next slide, please. All right, so some of the things that we have learned through this process. First of all, some of the people that we have kind of moved on from, it's not necessarily because of their lack of progressive theology. Most of them do have progressive theology, but their preaching was not what was indicated that this congregation is looking for in that all-church survey. Here, I need to see that.
All right.
I've forgotten. Okay. We also know that high-quality candidates are interviewing us because they have more options, right? And so in that process, we've discovered some things that we really needed to tighten up as a congregation, which we were in the process of doing in the previous years as well, but it kind of really reinforced the fact that we needed to do some of these things, such as updating our policies and procedures, really making sure that those are tightened up, and creating a pastor and staff relations committee, as well as having some staff leadership training on a wide variety of topics, including anti-racism policies and training. As was mentioned by Joel before, we've had candidates who are BIPOC, and that's a question that they ask: are we ready to call our first BIPOC candidate? And one of the challenges that we have that our conference minister did let us know about, there's just not a lot of candidates out there looking right now. Part of that is buying a home is expensive right now, right? Interest rates are kind of wild right now. But also we live in Texas, and Texas has a really bad rap in the press, right? I mean, it's like Florida man, Texas man, right? So that's one of those things that we have to really sell ourselves on. And I will tell you, the people that we have spoken to love the opportunity of our church based on the profile.
Yep.
It's our profile. It's who we are as a church that is appealing. And so we just have to hopefully live into that so that we can find our perfect match. And that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, some of the feedback that we've gotten on why they're interested in us is one, Shannon Michael. So Shannon Michael being his full self in the pulpit has been, I will tell you, multiple candidates have said, if that's who you are in the pulpit already, then they feel that they're already have a welcome place here. And then also just the profile that speaks, or the profile that speaks to the ministries that we're already doing and plan to do. All right, so Q&A?
Yeah.
And we're going to invite the search committee to come up, and so it's not just Vanessa and I answering questions if you have them. So, any questions that anybody has?
What kind of things pop up as like red flags? It's a very broad term.
Sure. So red flags could be inappropriate material that's public. So we're not a very Puritan congregation, let's admit it. We're a pretty irreverent bunch, and so that's stretching it pretty far as what we would kind of shock us and we wouldn't think would be inappropriate. But we haven't, not that we've found anything. Are you talking about the candidate that we didn't move forward with?
In general.
Yeah, so the candidate that we didn't move forward with happened to have some indiscretions at his previous church and was terminated for those, and we weren't notified of that termination. So just to let you know.
Some other red flags could be if we're watching their sermons and they say something that we're like, ooh, yeah, that doesn't really fit our church. So that could be another red flag.
That's a red flag that we've had a few times is candidates that have had very short stays at all of their previous locations, maybe only 2 years and then 3 years and then 1 year. So that that makes us worried.
And just to expand on the Texas element, we've been told by some of the other conference ministers just that, the West Coast and the East Coast, even the Mid-Atlantic, sometimes they don't even consider Florida and Texas just outright. The candidates are not even reading the profiles, they're not open to profiles. And so I think that might explain sometimes, the relatively slow rate of new packages that we've received.
In our profile, we actually can check per conference. So it can go out to all of them, but it will only go to the ones we actually select. It's all right. It may not even be, conference minister might not even see their profile. If they didn't check.
Many of the ones that we've received are, I didn't realize it, but New England, it's amazing. We learned that every community back to the founding of the country had a congregational church built into the bylaws of the community. So some of them are now just thick as thieves and are up in buildings 5 times this size, totally unsustainable. So, some of the candidates are coming from churches that are clearly unsustainable with the current size of congregation.
I will say one of the positive things that Vanessa touched on is that the majority of the candidates that we're seeing are progressive in their theology, which is something that we were a little bit nervous about in starting. But we're not seeing a lot of red flags in a lot of the sermons and the conversations that we're having. They're right in line mostly with kind of our thoughts and beliefs here. Betsy. I think any one of these people up here could probably deliver a sermon with the hundreds of sermons that they've watched by now, and the different styles, and so.
You mentioned the Texas of it all and interest rates as possible reasons, but then there were also a few that pulled themselves out. Was that on their own behalf, or was there something as part of the interviews on?
It was on their own behalf. So the challenge is we are in our own process, and like where we're at, all of these candidates are in their own process of search, and so we may be catching some of them at the beginning of their search versus the end. And this particular two candidates, we caught them right at the end, and so they had submitted their profile, but they were already in conversations with other churches, that they just move forward with them versus waiting. And that's one of the challenges we have, is that they don't want to give up on an opportunity if they're speaking to a different church, but we also want to be able to have plenty of time to vet them and interview them as well. So it's kind of a happy dance.
Vanessa had also mentioned that, there were some of the things that came up along the way in terms of us kind of needing to get our own house in order a little bit, and some of those things we're already doing. Is there anything else that we need to be looking at as part of this process? Or is this, we've put our best foot forward now at this point?
Yeah, so we gave the cabinet an update in the last cabinet meeting. We had paused on that because, again, we thought that we were about to be calling a candidate, and we had just thought, well, we had lost that opportunity to kind of clean some things up. But yeah, we brought forward a laundry list of recommended policies, and so some of them are like boundary policies, and we got asked a lot about a pastoral and a staff relationship committee, which has been in the works for months and months and months, but really needing to get onto that. And so also some of the training, we did get asked by almost every one of the black candidates, are we prepared to have your first, person of color? And I will admittedly say we told them no. We said that we're not prepared, but we're ready. And so, and that we weren't, and that was a very honest, and they really appreciated that response, right?
Good answer, thank you.
Right, and so we're not trying to hide that we've done a bunch of things to educate and prepare ourselves. We know that work needs to happen, and we know that work is not, if we do call a black senior minister, that work is not on them to do, to help, to lead for us, right? That's work is on us. And so those are some of the information that we shared back to them, which gave them a lot of peace of mind. Kim?
So with that said, so is that something that we're gonna try and implement and get started so that we can?
Yeah, so one of the things was we identified anti-racism training, also some policies, yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anything else you guys want to share? Kind of been hogging the mic here. No?
Is there anything that we can do, again, to echo what Betsy said, thank you so much for all of the hours and hours that you've given to us all. Is there anything that we can do to support you guys? Would you like some dinner? Yes, I'm gonna speak for
What I would say is keep showing up. So they're looking at our online worships, right? They're looking to see how active we continue to be. So they're looking to see, are we a sustainable community over the last several months? And so continue to show up every single Sunday, so that as they're looking at our online worship, they see that, right, that we have a full community to come to, that we're not. Yeah, come down to the.
Yeah, that is actually
As one that
quite-
stands up here, I like this side. We've got it covered. Like, you guys are great on this side. We've got some empty seats over here. But yeah, I don't know, anything else that would support us?
I would just say, again, it's not a request, but I appreciate the patience, that I know that this has been a very long process, and I really appreciate that the congregation is being very patient with us.
And I hope that based on what we explained, whew, they're too
Hot
close
mics.
to each other. That we really put in all of this effort because we really are invested in finding the right person for us for the next decade, hopefully, right? And so we didn't want to rush anything. We wanted to do it right.
Yeah, I know my partner James he's absolutely floored by this process. But if you think about it, I don't know if it's built to be slow, but it just works out that way because many of these folks have a church at the moment, and then we have to corral all of our schedules and their schedule. I mean, look how far out we had made this in person 2 weeks ago, and it's still not going to be until mid-March. So it just takes a while to have all the events occur. So.
All right, so our tech folks are waving us down saying,
sorry.
hey, we got to give Unity the space in 2 minutes.
Okay.
So if you have any other further questions, get with anybody from the search committee or reach out and we'll answer them for you. Thank you so much.